This is First Coast Math Clinic with Lesson 10, Simple Interest from Unit 5%. So the goal in this video is to calculate simple interest giving principal, interest, and time. So a basic example involving simple interest is something like this. So how much money will you earn if you invest $5,200 into an account that earns simple interest for 4 years at an annual rate of 3% interest per year? So we've got a couple pieces of information here, right? We've got that $5,200. It tells us specifically that we're earning simple interest. So I'll talk about that in a bit, like exactly what that is, and give some specific examples of what that looks like. We have time over 4 years, and we have an annual rate, so annual is yearly, of 3% interest per year. Okay, so what formula are we going to use to calculate simple interest? So our simple interest formula is principal times rate times time. So our principal, we're going to use P to represent our principal. And principal is basically just the initial deposit, right? So if we're going through our problem, well, what's our initial deposit? The initial deposit is that 5,200. So 5,200 is our initial deposit, the initial amount of money we put into our account. Then we've got our rate. So rate, we're going to use lowercase r, and rate is just our interest rate, and we're going to use a decimal to represent our interest rate. So our annual rate is 3%, so 3%, and we want to convert that to a decimal. We know our decimal is to the right of our value, so we've got to move our decimal point 2 places to the left. So this is going to be 0.03, so our rate is 0.03, and then time, that's going to be lowercase t, and just our time in years. So we know our time in years is 4 years. So time is 4. So what does simple interest mean? Well, when we talk about simple interest, what we mean is that initial principal doesn't change, right? In compound interest, the compound interest basically gets added back to the principal. So the interest that is computed or calculated the following year or month, or however often the interest is calculated, gets calculated based on a larger amount. Because this is simple interest, we're always basing our interest off of the same principal, so it's always going to be based off of $5,200 or whatever our initial principal amount is, right? So I want to just do a simple example and do this out in a table and show you what this looks like in terms of like 1, 2, 3, and then 4 years, just so you can kind of see the pattern here. All right, so let's set this up and find, so this first column is going to be our simple interest, so SI for simple interest. And then we're going to have year, and then our formula. Okay, so let's start with year 1, and our formula, we know our principal is 5,200 times our rate, which is 0.03, times our time, which is 1, and when we multiply all these together, so I'll draw a line so we can delineate this, 5,200 times 0.03 times 1 gives me 156. So after 1 year, our simple interest is going to be $156. Well, what about after 2 years? So after 2 years, because this is simple interest, our principal is still $5,200, right? So this amount here is just our principal. Okay, this amount here is our rate. This amount here is our time. So our rate stays the same, 0.03. Now our time is 2 years. Okay, so now we're at 2 years. So we want to figure out, well, how much money are we going to have if we invest for 2 years? We know at 1 year, we're going to have $156. At 2 years, our principal, $5,200 times 0.03 times 2, and we're going to get $312. Actually, let me write $312. Now we may notice that this is just plus 156. So let's do year 3. So again, we're keeping our principal because since this is simple interest, our principal always stays the same. Always stays 5,200. Interest, 0.03. Our time is 3 years now. 5,200 times 0.03 times 3 is going to give us 468, which is our year 2 plus 156. Okay, so we're seeing this pattern, plus 156, plus 156, plus 156. And then year 4, what we're looking for, 5,200 times 0.03 times 4, because now we're at year 4. And again, our principal is the same. And for year 4, we should have $624, which is another plus 156, right? So again, because this is simple interest, that principal stays the same at each calculation. And because we want to know our amount at 4 years, this is the answer we care about, how much interest we would have earned in 4 years. Our answer is going to be $624. Okay? I basically did like all these calculations out just to show you guys how everything changes in terms of simple interest. In particular, the fact that our principal stays the same, right? So our answer here would be, how much money would you have earned? We're going to earn $624 in 4 years. All right, let's get into some more examples calculating simple interest. So number 1, how much money will you earn if you invest $8,400 into an account that earns simple interest for 5 years at an annual rate of 4.3% interest per year? So our principal, or that's our initial deposit, so that's going to be $8,400. Our rate, 4.3%, so we can move that decimal 2 places. So it's going to be 0.043, and our time is 5 years. So for our simple interest, I'll just call this I, is equal to 8,400 times our rate, 0.043, times our time, 5. And when we multiply these values out, we're going to get $1,806, right? So that is the money earned, right? So that's the additional money. If we want to figure out total money, well, then we could take the principal that we have, that 8,400, add it to the money earned, so our total money earned is going to be, our total money is going to be $10,206. So the interest earned, 1,806, plus the initial principal, $8,400. For number 2, how much money will you earn if you invest $785 into an account that earns simple interest for 10 years at an annual rate of 6.1% interest per year? Get an answer, we're going to round it into the nearest hundredths. So our principal, our initial deposit, $785. Our rate, 6.1%, so we can write that as a decimal. That's going to be 0.061. Our time is 10 years, so our interest is going to be our principal, 785, times our rate, 0.061, times our time, 10. All right, and we multiply all this out, we're going to get $478.85. So that's our interest. We want to find our total money. All right, we could take that initial amount, our 785, and we could add back the interest earned. And we'll get $1,263.85. All right, for number 3, how much principal would you need to invest to earn $2,000 into an account that earns simple interest for 6 years at an annual rate of 5.1% interest per year? Round your answer to the nearest hundredth. So this problem's a little bit different. Now we're looking for how much principal, right? So that principal, that's our unknown, right? So we don't know the principal, but we want to earn $2,000. So this is our simple interest. So that's our interest. That's going to be our I. So that's 2,000 is our interest. Principal P is our unknown. Our time is 6 years. And our rate is 5.1%. We're going to move that decimal 2 places to the left. So it's going to be 0.051. So times 0.051 times 6. So 0.051 times 6 is going to give me 0.306p. We're solving for our principal now. Let's divide by 0.306. 0.306. We're going to get 6,535.95. So our initial principal needs to be $6,535.95. All right, and number 4, you invest $4,300 for 4 years into an account that earns simple interest. What interest rate would you need to earn $774 in those 4 years? So let's look at the information we have. Right, we've got this $4,300. So that's the amount we're investing. That's our principal. 4,300 and 4 years. So that's our time. And we want to earn $774. So that's our interest. So 774 is going to be our interest. Principal is 4,300. We want to figure out what our rate is going to be. That's our unknown. Okay? So times our rate, and our time is 4. So we want to solve this for our rate and figure out what our interest rate is going to be. So we've got 774 on the left. Let's multiply our 4,300 and our 4 on the right. And we're going to get 17,200 times R. Then divide by the 17,200. 17,200. 17,200 cancels out. And we get R equals, and you're going to get 0.045 on the left. All right, so that's our rate. Remember, our rate is a percent, so we want to convert that percent from a decimal, from a decimal to a percent. So how do we do that? We can move our decimal from the left to the right. We're going to move it 2 places to the right. So 1, 2, and this is going to be 4.5%. So our value for R should be 4.5%. Okay, so we did a bunch of different examples involving simple interest, calculating the principal, and calculating the rate given some different pieces of information. Hope this video helped you guys understand simple interest a little bit better. If you like this video, leave a like, comment, and subscribe. First Coast Math Clinic.